Hi, I'm Gail Stotler from the Nurses Station. I started this program called Nursing's STEM Initiatives because I know it's hard to believe nursing school did not teach us STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math. So the question is, what can STEM teach us about our nursing skills and our nursing practices that nursing school did not teach us? And that's what this series is about. And you're going to be pleasantly surprised. We're going to start with one of the vital signs, temperature. Think back to the very beginning of your nursing days, or maybe even before then. Who taught you to take a temperature, or how did you learn? What tool did you use? And what did you actually know about it? And then fast forward to nursing school. Again, what did they teach us about a temperature? It was either put a thermometer under your tongue or using the new digital ones that would just pick it up and try it. Usually we tried it on ourselves, but sometimes we just, give it a try, see what works. So what we're going to talk about today is the importance of that vital sign, because after all, it is a vital sign important to life. And in 2018, before COVID came to be, I tried to get the local community to do what I called know your normals. Everybody should take their own body temperature and their own vital signs and record them somewhere, because I knew from my own personal experience, 98.6 was not my normal. So I figured there were other human beings out there like me, and there are. So take the time to read this little article that I put together. I cited Harvard in this little article, so it wasn't just my opinion, but it's the beginning of addressing this subject from the important perspective that it should be looked at. So as we scan through that and you read, now we're going to start with the formal presentation. So I've put together the science behind this, and a large part of it is the math as well as the tools. But I want you to know that because this information in this article is not currently taught in nursing schools, I didn't write this from my opinion perspective. I've actually cited articles and quoted famous institutions and degreed individuals, and then present the scientific facts. We'll see if you come to the same conclusion. So under the abstract, we start. How did the practice of medicine arrive at 98.6 as normal for body temperature? Who determined that? Where on planet Earth was this decision made? I want to start with an article by a young lady named Sarah Kuda. And she writes lots of articles about many subjects, but this one interested her, piqued her curiosity, this concept of body temperature. And so she investigated it, explored it, came to some conclusions. So as you read her article, you also are going to see that she's quoting some pretty important people, institutions, journals, individuals. And as you read it and you go through it, she too comes to a conclusion that, wow, most people, including doctors, still think that everybody's normal temperature is 98.6 when it's not. In fact, what's normal depends on the person and the situation. So nicely described and summarized, Sarah. And again, she's an award-winning Colorado-based writer and editor, and just writes on interesting subjects. So this vital sign, this temperature is a vital sign, and therefore it's a very important subject. So next, here are two more articles. So don't take Sarah's word for it or my word for it. This one is from Yale, and this one is from Harvard. Again, in your free time, we cited the sites, pull it up, read it. But the concepts of fever and normal body temperature obviously have been around for actually 400 or more years. And it plays an important role in understanding this process of illness, and they knew that 400 years ago. They didn't know much else, but they had that inkling. So the practice of medicine and the practice of nursing has been using 98.6 for the last 200 years. And well, it's been around for 400, why just 200 with 98.6? We're going to explore that. But here is the history of temperature. The first fellow was Sanctorio Sanctorius. He was from Germany. You're going to discover that a lot of these fellows are from Germany, from the Max Planck Institute. So very famous institute, but not a lot was written about how he did it or what conclusions he came to or even what numbers he came to. But that's part of the history too. Some of it is lacking. Next entering the story is the mercury thermometer. In fact, it's called the Fahrenheit, right? F for Fahrenheit, C for Celsius. So a physicist from Germany, Daniel Gabriel Fahrenheit, invented the mercury thermometer. And that's how the mercury thermometer came to be, and that's how we came to be using it for so many years. That was in 1724, long time ago. A little further into history, in 1851 came along Karl Reinhold August Wunderlich, also of Germany. He took the mercury thermometer and he measured temperatures on 25,000 people. So it was really the first formal research project done on temperature. And at the end of that, he added up all those temperatures, divided by 25,000, and came to that number, 98.6. And that's why we have the bell curve of 97 was the lowest, 99 was the highest under the normal range, and 98.6 then became the mathematical average. Mathematical average as a number. Can you already see the problem with this logic? Here we have an example. A normal patient with a temp of 98.6, a normal temp of 98.6, presenting with a temp of 100.4. That's a 1.8 increase. And we draw the conclusion that this patient has a fever. Well, patient number 2, whose normal isn't 98.6, whose normal temp is 96.8, which is mine. If we increase my temperature by 1.8, I'm now at 98.6. So the person reading it goes, oh, they're normal. Nope, I'm not. I'm very sick. But by the number, it appears I'm normal. Okay, well, this is a problem. So now came along nursing and added a few more parameters, which was a good idea, but it's still based on wrong information. But let's look at it. They decided there were certain ranges. So normothermia was considered 96.8 to 99.5 Fahrenheit. Febrile was 99.5. Hyperthermia was 106. And then hypothermia was less than 95. Okay, well, we don't use those terms today. We don't use normothermia. We do use febrile. We don't use hyperthermia. We don't use hypothermia. Unless we're talking about somebody who fell through the pond and they're in ice water. But let's look next at Harvard. Harvard came along and they put their own spin on this. And so theirs falls more in line with what we currently use today in the sense of a low-grade fever is 99.1 to 100.4. Moderate is 100.6 to 102.2. And high grade is 102.4 to 105.8. But again, still based on 98.6. And even they, in their first sentence says, while any temperature above your normal, well, they didn't account for that in their grading scale here. So maybe we should look at a new rule. Shouldn't the new rule be your normal plus 0.4 means febrile, plus 0.5 to 1.8 means low grade, 2 to 3.6 means moderate grade, and 3.8 to 7.2 means high grade. So we get to create a whole new scale to introduce to the medical world, should we choose to do it. I think we should. So now we look at the patient X who has a normal temp of 97. If their temp reads 97.4, they're febrile. And so what we can do is do a table for, if your normal's 97, these are the parameters for you. If your normal's 97.4, these are the parameters for you. So yeah, it's going to be a whole page of numbers, but that also can be computerized and easily accessed and easily followed. So now when we look back at the story with the person of, if you're normal at 97, if your temperature goes up even 2 degrees, you're sick. You're certainly not normal. All right. Then came along Swan-Ganz. Dr. Swan and Dr. Ganz, who developed the Swan-Ganz catheter. Some of us have heard of that. They measured the body temperature in the pulmonary artery, and that became the gold standard for body temperature. Well, they built that gold standard on the findings of Dr. Wunderlich. And we don't routinely measure body temperature by putting a catheter into the pulmonary artery. So we're not going to do that, but it's part of the STEM history, so we needed to tell that part of the story. But today, we still rely upon Wunderlich's experiment with the mercury thermometer and using 98.6 as the rule. So now that we have a flawed number to live by and measure by, what else can affect or influence that temperature number? So to improve the efficiency and timeliness of temperature taking, because that mercury thermometer took forever, and depending on where you place that thing, could have been dangerous. So others decided to develop new measuring tools. And the U.S. Naval Medical Research Institute in Bethesda went through and analyzed some of today's devices. As a historical point, the first non-contact digital, in other words, thermometer, was by Dr. Benzinger in 1964. So not that long ago. Many of you in nursing were born after 1964. And those of you who weren't, well, some changes have been made. So without going into any further origin developments of each tool, let's just jump right in and compare the efficiency and efficacy of the tools that are in use today. So this article, again, not my opinion, but this article by this particular group actually did that. So read this article at your convenience, but read it. It's part of nursing research. But the conclusions are posted here. Now, what they determined in this article was that the tympanic thermometer provided the more accurate temperature of any of those tools out there. Very interesting. How many of us are using some other device, like the infrared forehead thermometer? But in any way, just know that depending on the tool, depending on the time of day, the time of month for females, the type of tool you're using, the person using the tool, the cooperation of the patient, all those things influence the result. But again, what does vital mean? It means important to life. So we need to pay attention to this vital sign. Now, we all tried to take temperature seriously just recently during COVID. In fact, everybody who came into a building was checked with a thermometer, right? Well, what impact did temperature have on the COVID crisis? Another article that was written, because what they realized too is Wow, not all these temperature readings were accurate. So again, how many COVID cases did we miss because half the population on our bell curve scale is below 98.6? But if we saw 98.6 on that thermometer, for those 50%, we called them normal when really they weren't. So how many people were invited into the building with an elevated temp? A lot. So we come to the conclusion, in my opinion, I hope it's yours, but please tell me. Every school nurse, every mom, every CNA, every medical assistant, every paramedic, every hospital and doctor's office nurse, every doctor for that matter, and every individual needs to know this story. And every human being needs to know their normal and write it down. So as part of your continuing education, if you feel so inclined, do your own research. Maybe it's the first 100 patients, the next 100 patients you're going to work with. Or maybe it's you get 100 nurses together and they all take their temperature and they throw their numbers into the hat. But at some point in time, do that research. Garner and gather 100 numbers. Total them, divide by that 100 and see what the average is. But then make the distinction. Oh, that doesn't mean Jackie, whose temperature is 97, isn't normal at 97. Because she is, that's her normal. Let's not try to throw her into any other category. So I suggest that not only do we do temperature, but we do all the vitals. But we're going to talk about each of these vitals in another section and start thinking about the Normals ID card for yourself, for the people you care about, your family members, friends, coworkers, and then tell every patient. But it does make a great fundraiser out there, so keep that in mind if you can influence that anyway. Now, here are the 10 questions. So if you decide if you have paid for the CE and you want credit for this, and this particular article and presentation itself is going to be worth 1 full CE. The article read just by itself is 1 full CE. And then there's going to be additional questions, but start with these 10, copy it, put it into your email, put the answers to it, and then email the results to me at mgailstotler@gmail.com. That's on the website, on the web page. And then we will apply those credits to your total, to your account, so to speak. And at the end of your 2-year segment, the Nurses Station and CEII, the organization that's actually going to issue your credits, the Continuing Education Institute of Illinois, we will send you a list of your credits with a certificate verifying those for your records. Hope you enjoyed this. I hope you benefited from this. I hope you're looking and thinking differently about that temperature vital sign. It's more than just pick up a thermometer, any thermometer, and get a reading and then write it down. It's important. Thanks for listening. Please tell your colleagues.